Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Board Gaming Doctor. My name is Phil, and I'll be your Board Game Doctor today. In this episode, I go over some plays that I've had of some games in the last month of April 2024, and this is focused on games that I did not get to. Here's a list of all the games that I was able to get to, and as you can see, I've covered these in more detail with their own separate video, such as Cosmos and Furnace. But I did want to shine some light on some other games that I played, some lighter games, and other revisits of some other games that I had a chance to play again. And so I'm excited to share that. And once again, thank you for all of those who have shown some support in the recent days. This episode is going to be very similar to the last one, the 100 subscribers special, where it's a little bit more off the cuff and unscripted. And due to time, this is all the editing that I will do. It'll be very minimal, but I'm really excited to continue making content for you guys and look forward to doing that in the months to come. So let's start off with World Wonders, Mundo, World Wonders Pack. I got to purchase this as a pre-order and own the physical copy of World Wonders as well now. And so I had the chance to play this both solo and multiplayer. So this actually should be a log play of 2. But at first, so the reason that I was really interested, I had a really good first impression of World Wonders, and I mentioned that in a separate video a couple of months past. And so I was really excited to check out this new expansion, which offers some more wonders to play with, as well as the Mundus cards, which I initially thought would only would actually apply broadly to all of the wonders and kind of change up the way that they're scored. Because one of the things that I had a difficult time with when I played World Wonders the first time was I felt like the wonders themselves here did not have as much of an impact to the game. They gave you a point at the end of the game, or maybe 2, but that was it. Like, it would have been really cool if they had some sort of unique power that, or an extra objective for you to try to chase, in addition to all of the public objectives and other ways that you score in this game. And so I thought initially that this new expansion would include some variable objectives that would apply broadly to all of the wonders. But unfortunately, I realized after the fact that the Mundus cards really only affected the new wonders that were set in this expansion. And so you would have to play the game, if you included those Mundus cards, with 1 or 2 stacks of just these wonders in addition to the base ones, thus diluting the wonders that you would be able to build from the base game and really heavily focusing on these. And so I didn't like that ratio very much and was kind of disappointed in that fact. Although, I mean, it's really nice to have some good looking wonders and some representation here of some of the other wonders that we've all heard of and things. So yeah, it was a little bit of a letdown, which is why I don't have it as highly rated. But having played this game, and I was kind of on the edge of not really enjoying this game as much the second time around, but the third time that I played World Wonders multiplayer, it did go around the 70-minute, 90-minute mark. It was a lot more crunchier and tight. And I should say that when I played it at a 3-player level versus solo, I don't know, I didn't feel as challenged with the solo game for some reason. It's pretty much the same game, but when I included some other players into the play, it just made it pop out a little bit more as far as the strategy and when to, use all of your money to buy a wonder versus when to try to hold off and gamble a little bit to try to get a couple of other buildings or roads, before someone snatched a wonder. And so I liked that tension of when to, pounce on something that you needed. It felt like the right amount of cutthroat for me rather than with the solo. I don't know. It just felt a little bit too rough and everything was just gobbled up by the AI opponent before I can get to it. And so, yeah, I really, I did enjoy the play of it. next time around with the multiplayer experience. And so I think I'll still hold on to World Wonders for a while, but despite that good play, I wasn't as impressed with the Mundus expansion, the Mundo expansion, and we'll see what else is offered in the future. Next, I got to play Romi Rami. This is a card game. This is a rummy type of card game where you have cards of various suits and colors and numbers, I should say, and you are drafting them into your hand based off of, like, you can pick up all the fours or all of the cards with a clover sign on them or something like that, and you have them in your hand, and you're playing them out in rummy style in matches and in sequence as well. But you're doing so to fulfill these objectives, which it's kind of hard to see here in this picture, but you are trying to lay down your cards in those certain objectives, which are variable and from a separate deck as well. You have these crown cards as well, giving you extra bonuses if you fulfill them, and you basically play through the whole deck, and whoever has the most points wins. And so it's not a very hard game to play. I played this on Board Game Arena, and it was a really good time. I think a 7.0 is a very appropriate score for this game. And yeah, it was just a very smooth, rummy style game that if you enjoy games like that, I think you should check it out. I played Spellbook a couple of times on Board Game Arena, and this is a Phil Walker Harding game from last year, where you have and I think this is a good picture, you have a kind of a tile collection type of aspect from a bag, and so there's a lot of randomness in the types of resources with different colors and icons on them that you're trying to collect. There are ways to mitigate it, but essentially you're collecting these and turning them into activate these spells of different colors. And I believe that in the physical version you can kind of mix and match these tiers to make the combinations a little bit different every time. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I didn't get that sense of drastic variability from the couple of plays that I had on this with Board Game Arena. I felt like the spells themselves were pretty basic and straightforward, and there was a lot of randomness that was inherent in the collection of the tiles that you use to play the game with, such as these, right? And so it didn't really land for me as highly. A 6.6 out of 10 isn't too bad, and it is a pretty light game. I think it's a little bit lighter than what this is depicting it to be, but it was an okay game. Next was Discordia. I have a couple of plays of this, and in this game, it kind of looks like and sounds like a Civilization game, but it's more of a dice rolling tableau builder, where the goal of the game is to, you have a bunch of these idle workers in your supply, and you're trying to assign them and get them out of your supply, and whoever does that first wins. And so you assign the red workers to the red buildings, like the military buildings, and so on and so forth. And all of that is mitigated and mediated by dice rolling. And so yes, there is some inherent randomness based off of the dice rolling, and the dice also come in different colors, and so that has to do, there's some further restrictions because of that as well. There are ways to mitigate the dice rolls, and the alternative solutions that I think are secondary to what the base game is trying to have you do, or at least the base goal, the base objective of this game is to get rid of your workers, right? But there are ways to progress up tracks or to fight off barbarians and fulfill different objectives, that it felt like there were things that you could still do on your turn. The dice rolls weren't as strictly punishing if you weren't able to reach what you're trying to do with your initial goal of exhausting your workers. But yeah, so this game has had a lot of support, I've noticed, in the past year. Its own digital app has been developed, as well as an implementation on Yucata. And so there are various ways for you to try this game. I've heard it described as kind of like a roll and write with a lot more components, and rather than a drawing aspect of it. But yeah, so if you like kind of that dice mitigation aspect, and you're trying with this kind of unique twist on exhausting your supply of workers to win the game. There are other ways to end the game, of course, but if you kind of like that, then I think Discordia is great to try, and it is relatively easy to try if you want to do it online or on a digital app on your phone. I got to play Forever Home. So this is another game by the Hazels, Lottie and Jack. I reviewed Dog Park a couple of months ago, or I think last month, and really enjoyed that. This is another lightweight game that has a puzzle aspect to it. If I were to describe this game, comparing it to other games that have been released already, I feel like this is kind of a mix between Cascadia and Tiny Towns, where you are dual drafting these cards, these dog cards with different shapes and objectives to try to fulfill. They have points on them as well. And you, in addition to that, can draft from another row and market of colored dog tiles that you play onto your grid here in front of you. And you can move tiles as you wish, which is not seen in Tiny Towns. It's more restrictive in that game. But you mix and match these tiles to fulfill these objectives that you draft from as well, all the while trying to get points from that, as well as fulfilling public objectives, kind of like how you have them in Dog Park. And so I think this is a really good game because it utilizes great mechanisms, familiar mechanisms if you have played games with dual drafting like Cascadia, and the tableau building of Tiny Towns. And so, yeah, this is a really solid game, and I really enjoyed playing it. Next, we have Isle of Trains. So this is a Seth Jaffe game from last year, where it's primarily a card-based game with multi-use cards. You're drawing from a large deck here with a market of cards that you're drafting from, which include trains, the cars that you attach to those trains, different places that you can deliver to, as well as these shared public delivery spots as well. And you're using these cards not only to build out your train, but also to convert them into goods. They are the currency to build out your trains and to convert into goods as well. And you are basically collecting those resources and working with what you draw and what you collect from to make deliveries as fast as possible to get as many points as you can. So it's not a terribly difficult game to play. I played this on Board Game Arena. I think the one aspect that I've had the most trouble with, for whatever reason, and I've watched and read, rule videos and the rule book and everything too, but I still had a really hard time figuring out how to deliver things. And maybe that was just me with the Board Game Arena implementation, where it wasn't as straightforward as I thought it was. But in any case, it is a pretty straightforward game. And if you like multi-use cards and something that's a little bit of a smaller box vibe, and I think there's a lot of game here, very similar to games that I've run into in the past, like Village Rails is a similar game to this, I think. In terms of mechanisms and play style and game length and everything. But yeah, so this is pretty fun, and if you like those types of games, you can try this on Board Game Arena. Next, I got to play Looot. This is a newer game, 2024 game. It's a very abstracted game of tile collection from a shared board, this is your personal board that you're playing onto, but you're advancing your own, Viking tiles onto this shared board, and as you advance your Viking, you get the resource that is depicted here, or the tile, and you get to place that tile onto your tableau in any spot. And for long story short, the goal of this game is to match up these tiles next to a certain type of tile, like this Viking Gnar, and if you do so, you get points by doing so. You get there are certain objectives and criteria for you to claim these towers and castles as well. And so there's a lot of good tile laying and abstracted strategy going on here that are very similar. It reminded me of Azul in the way that it played, and so if you like Azul, I think you'll like Looot as well. And this is also on Board Game Arena for you to try. The penultimate game here is High Season, Grand Roll and Write. This is a roll and write version of Grand Austria Hotel, released last year, and that is currently on beta, if I'm not mistaken, on Board Game Arena. I do admit that as I played this game for the first time, it was very much a learning game for me. And when I say that, I am learning the game as I'm playing it. And so I'm just kind of clicking buttons here and there, but you're essentially doing a lot of the same things that you're doing in the base game, collecting money and resources to pay for staff and to prepare rooms and to advance up the Emperor track and all of those great things that you're doing in the base game, which is available to play digitally on Yukata and versus High Season, which is on Board Game Arena. I do like the loan mechanism that is inherent in this game, perhaps to help mitigate the dice rolls as they are assigned to different areas and in a kind of a similar fashion that you would see in the dice rolling and dice selection mechanisms that you see in the base game. And so for me, like I think there is enough of the games shared in both of these, the roll and write and the base game, that I would rather play Grand Austria Hotel. But I think physically this game would be a little bit more easy. It'd be easier to carry around and play if you want that Grand Austria Hotel experience. And so I think it fulfills the purpose there. But gameplay wise, it's very similar to what Grand Austria Hotel is trying to do. And there's more to do in the base game, plus the expansion, of course. And so I would rather play Grand Austria Hotel, but this was a nice implementation that shares a lot of mechanisms and vibes of the base game. So you can try it out on Board Game Arena as well to see if you feel the same. And then finally, I got to play Mosaic Wars and Disasters with 4 other friends for a 5-player game. And so this was something that I had anticipated. This is probably my most anticipated play of April, and I was really excited to get that to the table. Now, Mosaic itself, if you haven't heard, is a game that it's kind of a large deck, icon collection type of game, very similar to Ark Nova and Terraforming Mars, with a shared board where the military opportunities are mostly with area control or area majority, where if you do have a larger influence both with military as well as with cities and wonders, etc., in these different colored areas, you get points intermittently during the game. And so the technology track is mitigated mostly through this, I'll just go back to this picture, this technology deck, and all of these techs are individualized, and so there's a lot of variety that comes with each deck and what they can do. And so that initially drew me into the game, and I've really enjoyed my plays so far of this game. And what the things that are new that Mosaic Wars and Disasters brings are, there are a few things. One, it adds a few more technologies to the deck, mostly to account for the new military unit, which is the Navy and the ships that you can play onto the board here. There are some rules there. There are also some more ways to interact with each other's militaries with an upgraded military action selection here, where you can eliminate other players a little bit easier, and there's some like tactics that you can draw from to pay for in a very similar fashion as to the achievements and golden ages and things like this. And so plus there's like an additional leader. There are some disaster event cards as well. And just to get to the point, I think the most disappointing thing about this expansion to me was the disasters in the events. One, they were all shuffled. They're supposed to be shuffled in the bottom third or so of each of these decks, very similar to the Empire scoring cards. And so one, they're not as impactful. They all kind of come at the end when everyone has kind of established their strategies. And so they weren't as punishing, but they were also randomly punishing as well, because they would target someone with the lowest amount of icons or something like that. And you would have no way to prepare for that, which is reminiscent of a real disaster, right? But it just feels like it would be more punishing, I guess, and if everyone shared in on the disaster and everyone suffered from it. So thematically, it probably makes more sense to keep it like that, but where it only affects one person for having, randomly not have collected as many icons as someone else, right? Which may or may not attune to your strategy, and it's all random based anyway. But and you may not even see them before the empire scoring is taken and the game ends. And so they weren't as impactful as I thought they would be, and they were kind of just random in how negatively impactful they were. And so it didn't impress me as much, I suppose. But I was a big fan of the increased interaction that you have with the military, the new naval base units. In our particular game, I focused really heavily on military. I was the general. Oh, and there are some additional asymmetric player powers that you can draft and include as well to combo with your leader. And so that was really fun to combine some of those aspects. And so for example, in this game, I went really heavy on military, had a lot of widespread influence, and everyone was trying to not rush the empire scoring and end the game by collecting as many achievements as possible. And so this particular game that we had went really long. We spent about 4 hours playing this game rather than the alleged 2 hours or so that it takes to play this game. And so that kind of put a dent in my enjoyment of this game. I'm actually bringing down a rating of Mosaic after that play. It just took way too long, and it didn't feel very dissimilar, in fact, compared to my previous plays. It felt like you just kind of do the same thing, right? You play your cards, you put down your influence, and you hope to either get all of the achievements and golden ages, or you try to rush down the empire scoring. Now, I still really enjoy this game. I want to continue to play it, and everyone was talking about it that I played with it afterwards, and in the days to come as well. Everyone was really discussing it, but just how long it really took to play that game was kind of disheartening at that player count at 5. And so I do agree it plays best. It probably plays best at 3 or 4, and not at 5 or 6, and it just was too long of a play for me. But I'm not itching to have it be brought back to the table just yet, but I do still enjoy it. And but yeah, I'm still this is probably my favorite civilization themed game thus far, but am willing to try others to see if it does scratch that civilization itch better than Mosaic does. I know Through the Ages does a lot for me as well. It's one of my highly regarded games, but yeah, they each have their pros and cons, I suppose. So yeah, so those are my thoughts of Wars and Disasters and my month of April as well. And so thank you again for listening or viewing. I hope you schedule an appointment with us real soon, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.